Is better for Milady and Remilio, which are our two NFT collections. You'll see it in the audience listening. It's all these little chibi anime avatars. They're kind of we're an NFT, but it's also you don't need to own it to wear it. It's more of a digital tribe and community. We are known for being free speech maxis and also believing in having fun online.
I can definitely see that. So how exactly did you? So how did you and Nick Fuentes get into it with one another? I see there's a little bit of a conflict that was extremely mimetic. So what exactly is the conflict? Like, what is the nature of it? Why does Nick
Uh,
Fuentes have an issue with Miladies?
Honestly, I wasn't actually that sure. I was kind of surprised when it happened. It seems to be that he has some prior beefs with some other people that we partnered with. So we've been doing some work with Sovereign House in New York and Passage Press. We had just done a party with in DC, and I guess he's not so happy with them. I think he seems to think that we're all being controlled by Peter Thiel. And that's frankly a meme that we've put out there too. We've joked a lot about Peter Thiel being our handlers and uh, telling us what to post, but that it's just trolling. I think he saw the troll and thought it was real.
Speaking of the devil, we have Nick Fuentes here. I just let him up. Let's see
Yeah,
if he connected.
looks like he's
Hey, what's
busy.
up?
Hey
Hey,
Nick,
what's up,
how's it
man?
going?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
we can, loud and clear.
Sweet. What's up?
No,
Yeah, we were just doing intros. Do you want to go ahead? I did mine.
Yeah. Um, for those that don't know me, or maybe for you, I'm Nick Fuentes. I'm a live streamer. I've been doing a show called America First for the past 8 years. And although I've been called a lot of things, and I don't know how much you've heard about me, or what your impression is about me or my views. I'm, I guess I would call myself a Catholic reactionary, American nationalist Catholic reactionary. It's probably best way to describe me. But yeah, I'm looking for. I've been looking forward to the conversation, so I'm excited to be with you tonight.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I am pretty familiar. I come from a kind of 4chan background, so I've seen your come up. I'm not that super engaged in like the political scene, so I don't really know about some of the beefs that it seems I've accidentally waded into. That's what I was saying before you joined, but I have a general understanding of the white Christian coalition viewpoint that you come from. I'm mired in those politics. At least I've been around all those scenes and know a lot of the talking points there. How familiar are you with Milady and Remilia?
Not super familiar, honestly. I've heard about you guys for a long time, so I'm been aware of you guys for a while. Someone that used to work for me actually is very into Milady and has been, and so I've seen it from them, and I know a lot of, or I should say maybe not a lot, but I'm aware of some Groypers, some followers of mine who have a Milady Avi, and I know you guys always say Remilio. I didn't understand until we talked what that was. And sometimes it's Remilio, and then that's Remilia.
Uh-huh.
But I've been doing a little bit of research, and so I kind of have the gist. So Milady is the NFT. You made the Milady Maker under the Remilia Corporation. Do I have that right?
Yes, that's yep. So far, so
Okay.
true.
And why do you say Remilio at the end of everything?
So Remilio is it's a sister collection or a brother collection, really. So Milady is the main one, and then we released Remilio. It's also an NFT, and they
Okay.
kind of represent a little bit two different tribes. The Remilio is the one that I think, are the Groypers and Remilio share some community crossover. It's a lot more into sort of juvenile shit posting, trolling, that kind of 4chan style fun, but on Twitter. Milady is also 4chan influence, but it's a lot more aligned to cypherpunk values. It's strong commitments to like free speech, free information, free markets. Um,
Hmm.
Vermilio is also a free speech maxi project, but it's a lot more in the way of like baiting people into saying retard or starting end towers and that kind of thing. And
Hmm.
uh, a lot of shit posts or jokes inside the collection, like referencing QAnon or like the Trump campaign, that kind of ethos.
Gotcha. And so let me ask you this. So, um, I mean, really, I don't have a problem with you. I don't really know you, and I don't have a problem with the Milady people. But I mean, to me, the crux of this conversation and why we're here is, and I think you actually posed the question. I think it's the right question. You said, why should anyone who is within 3 degrees of separation from Peter Thiel, why should they be canceled or blacklisted or something like that? And I
Mhm.
think that is really and I wouldn't phrase it exactly that way. I don't think I am blacklisting or canceling people. At least I'm not trying to do that, and we could get into that. But I just want to make that clear at the beginning, and that was how you posed it. I wouldn't necessarily say it that way, but that, I mean, it's the relationship with Thiel and then the broader little tech PayPal mafia space, because of course Thiel, as well as some of these other elements, venture capital elements, they are backing a lot of these projects, which, although they're not necessarily political per se, there is a lot of overlap with a political world. Like, for example, the Remilia after party, the Milady after party, following the Passage Press inauguration party. That's an example of the overlap. So let me ask you, because I know you do a lot of ironic stuff. And when I asked you, when I said, is this ironic? I mean, that sounded like a mic drop. You posted and said, oh, I got a Peter Thiel grant. And I said, was this ironic? And that sounded like a mic drop, like, oh yeah. But it was that ironic. So I guess as much as you're willing or comfortable to answer, can you clarify what your relationship is with? Because I don't think you work for Palantir. That, I think that's a troll. But like, what is the relationship that you have with Thiel? If you can speak on that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have any. I've never met him. We've never taken Remilia is entirely self-funded or crowdsourced through crypto. This happened very publicly, with a lot of intent so that we could retain our autonomy. Uh, we've never taken private capital. I'm not exactly opposed to it. It's just something that we would only do while we can make sure that we can do so while we're maintaining our ideals. So we're very independent in that sense. Um, I would love to take Peter Thiel even just $100, just so I could say that we did receive that money, because I think it's very funny. And that's exactly what we were memeing. Actually, if you look up that tweet, it's a pasta. It's not. We just put it. You can find 100 ladies having made that same post saying that they took money from Peter Thiel to. If you actually read it too, that what it's saying is that Peter Thiel is giving us emails of tweets that we should retweet personally, like 20 to 30 tweets that he asked us to retweet. It's pretty clearly a joke. Um, you
Okay.
know, the, but the funny thing is, Nick, what I was so surprised is we were actually mocking libtards who had canceled us previously for other random associations. To add to the list, we've also done things with Praxis. They also get accused of being deal backed. And it's our native impulse is to okay, just lean into it. If people are going to accuse us of things, just it's funny, and we're just going to mock them and put out bait to get fake cancels, like light a fire and just have a laugh. But what was surprising to me is I didn't even know there was uh, a general Thiel backed conspiracy from the right. I spent the last few days trying to learn a little bit about what your position was there. And I guess, well, you're an anti-Zionist is what it comes down to, right?
Well, that's certainly a part of it. I mean, I would put it simply by saying that these people like Mark Andreessen, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, they all come from the PayPal mafia. They all come from that tech venture capital world. Like, there's significant
Hmm.
overlap. with, Andreessen was on eBay, and, Thiel was into Facebook, and Andreessen is an advisor to Zuckerberg. And, so these people come from a very specific milieu. And there is also big overlap with the intelligence world. Obviously, Palantir was funded by InQtel in the beginning, and
Mhm.
first contractor was the CIA for 10 years.
Mhm.
And so I'm very suspicious of their connections to the intelligence world. That's a big part of it. And then I would also, to make it very simple, I would say that I don't think that my idea of the right wing aligns with theirs. I think that, one of them, I forget off the top of my head who said it, but they're Silicon Valley liberals. They claim to be Silicon Valley liberals. Peter Thiel is gay. Sam Altman is gay. Many of them are immigrants. Thiel, David Sachs, these guys are immigrants. They're pro-gay. I don't think any of them are Christian. Thiel, allegedly Vance became Catholic at the behest of Thiel. He's super into Girard, um, but there's some. It's a little dubious because he lives a gay lifestyle and he's not doesn't go to a Catholic church. So, and Thiel is maybe one of the better ones, arguably, if there are better ones. So you have this group of basically secular humanist, like socially liberal, techno libertarians, and as a Catholic nationalist, who I wouldn't call myself, strictly speaking, a white nationalist, but I do support white identity politics. I find myself totally at odds with them philosophically. And I think that they have put a lot of money into these projects to convince people that it's basically to create a Trojan horse. It has some of the trappings of like a dissident right movement, and it styles itself in that way, but it's concealing the fact that they're really bringing forward this libertarian liberal agenda. And I feel like that with Trump. I feel like that with this populist movement. And so I wouldn't say it's me, the way you said it, is that I'm canceling everybody with connections to Thiel. I want to make it transparent so that people understand exactly, where to follow the money and who's paying who and what they're getting. And then I'm arguing that, okay, so if these projects are backed by these intelligence contractors who are gay immigrant liberals, like obviously they probably don't align with my values, our values, me and my community. So that's kind of the basis of it. And I mean, I don't know, do you think that's objectionable?
I mean, I think you're generally accurate. They could be described as techno libertarians. I think where I disagree is just your methods of disagreement. I mean, all right, in our first interaction, your first impulse was to dox me. Um, I've historically very strongly argued against doxing in any fashion. I'm a big believer in the marketplace of ideas, with as Twitter or any blogging, all as a commons where we can share a discourse and debate openly and um, in private, not be persecuted for what you might have shared in the commons, with the commons being a place where we can just, even like on your show, you often do bits. You're not very serious about everything you say, but people can take it out of context and treat it very literally, and it's in bad faith. In the same way, like you can disagree with a guy like Peter Thiel or, for example, Curtis Yarvin. But what's shocking to me is you come in here and you're like doxing them, and you're like doxing these people that are like, I mean, I've talked to them, and not all this list of figures, but like Passage Press, for example, they're good people. I might not agree with like everything they say, but they are advancing the same kind of right of bringing back an open discourse and these sort of like the dark intellectual web and these ideas that were suppressed over the last 10 years under the left censorship. So I just don't really, because I don't really understand why are you so aggressive and like divisive towards them. um,
Well, I would say in the first place, I mean, regarding doxing, I actually agree with you. I mean, I was really doxxed. I think we do
Yeah.
have to distinguish between a hard and a soft dox. Posting someone's identity is one thing, and then someone who is a public figure posting their address and phone number is something different. And I got hard doxed. Like my address went and blew up and got 20 million impressions on X, and
Mhm.
someone showed up and tried to kill me at my house. Like that.
Yeah,
So I get it.
you
And
pepper sprayed them. That was pretty based.
well, I can't comment on that because I got fucking charged in connection with just fucking bullshit. But that's the allegation. So I'm with you, and from my understanding, your identity had been out there already. You had been doxxed previously,
Mhm.
so I do see that as different. And for what it's worth, when it comes to the soft form of doxing, revealing people's identity, I'm a little bit less sympathetic about that when it concerns public figures. Like, for example, somebody like Bronze Age Pervert. This is a guy who's super influential, is a writer, and he gets reviewed in Claremont Review of Books, which is very spooky. Claremont Institute, founded by Harry Jaffa, who was a disciple of Leo Strauss. He's the founder of the West Coast Straussians. Claremont is funded by Peter Thiel and Paul Singer. Paul Singer is like a Jewish Israeli nationalist, super pro-gay. Peter Thiel is gay, and half his net worth is tied up in an In-Q-Tel intelligence contractor. They reviewed his book because Curtis Yarvin gave it to Michael Anton. And Michael Anton is now, I think, an advisor on the National Security Council, or he's a policy advisor or something. Anton is a student of Harry Jaffa. And it's like, so now they review his book, and this is what makes him blow up. And he gets talked about in Politico and the New York Times. They write favorably about him. And, I initially, so the reason I'm saying this is because it kind of connects to what you said. Why am I so aggressive? Aren't these guys like broadly right wing? Don't they promote like a dark intellectual kind of thing? That was how I felt about them for a long time. But what was the question that I asked myself is why? Because really, not to be like juvenile, but Bronze Age Pervert started it with me. This is how it all started. Me and him, I actually had him on my show. I said, come on my show. He sent Mike Ma, who designed the cover for Selective Breeding, and he does the graphic design for Steve
Mhm.
Saylor's speaking tour. And Mike Ma's obviously in that world. He sent Mike Ma to read pre-written answers to my questions on the show. And I think that was the first interview that he did for Bronze Age Mindset when he came out with the book many years ago. So I used to associate with him, and I talked to him in DMs, and we were mutuals. Then during the Groyper War 5 years ago, so in 2019 in the fall, I hosted a very small get together. I mean, literally like 20 people, 25 people, and they were all friends of mine. And Bronze Age Pervert goes on Twitter and says, "This is Charlottesville 2. Don't go. You're going to be doxxed. No one should go. Face fagging is, counterproductive to what we're trying to do." And I reached out privately, like everybody says to do. And I said, "Hey, man," I said, "that's really not what we're doing." I said, "It's 25 people. We all know each other." I said, "Are you going to take it back?" And he goes, "No, you shouldn't do it." And I said, "Well, you're a fucking liar then." I said, "Because here I am explaining to you what it is, and you're telling people not to go." And that's where it started. And, he's been amplifying a lot of bad faith attacks against me. If he wants to attack me for being Catholic, there's an intellectual disagreement between neoliberals and Catholics. Fine. But he's amplifying smears. And so I asked and I'm not trying to ramble here, but I said, why is this guy coming after me? What's really going on? And so I started to peel back the layers, and he had already been doxxed. And we start talking about who he is. And it turns out, this guy goes to MIT, Columbia, Yale, and we start to see who he's connected with. He was at Columbia at the same time as Bari Weiss. She writes an article in Columbia Spectator in the end of 2004. He writes an identical essay for Columbia Spectator in early 2005. about Columbia unbecoming. People can look that up. It was a big controversy about pro-Palestine professors on the campus, and all the Israelis were trying to shut it down. And Bari Weiss was working for this group called the David Project. Then she goes to Israel to get trained up by Yoram Hazony to write op-eds, and then she writes under Bret Stephens. She's the protege of Bret Stephens.
Nick, you're
Yeah.
uh, you're kind
All
of
right,
rambling.
okay.
You've
I'm sorry.
covered all this ground before.
I'm
You know,
sorry.
I've seen
Well,
I've seen your.
let me.
The
Well,
thing
all
is,
right. Well, let me tie it
I
up with.
can't even. I
Well, the
get
point is,
I get the gist of it.
okay.
Okay,
Well, let me wrap it up then. I'll just say this. So here's the point. It matters who these people are. Okay, and the ones that are saying, "Oh, you can't say who we really are," it's like, because you're right.
Nick.
I think he disconnected. I can't hear him.
Can he? Shows a speaker to me. I don't know.
Yeah, Nick, you there?
No, never mind. He's gone now. I'll look for him. Bring him back.
Cool. Yeah, spaces are glitchy sometimes, even if you like are interacting with stuff on X, or say are getting a few reactions. Sometimes you may get disconnected. So this is quite normal. This happens all the time. I think when he's back,
There we go. Yeah, he's back.
Is he
I'm
back?
bringing him up. Yep.
you might check. Is he there?
It says connecting.
Okay.
Yeah, space is real glitchy today. I can't even see Charlotte on the stage right now.
Really?
Nice.
Really?
Yeah, but on my
That's
other
crazy.
monitor I can. So I don't know. It's just weird.
So is he requesting? Don't see him.
To me, yeah, for Nick it says connecting with a little circle.
Ada, what do you
He's stuck
see?
on connecting. He's stuck on
He's also
connecting.
Charlotte is here. Charlotte, you still there?
Yeah. You can hear me.
He just left. He just
Yeah, we hear you.
requested. No, let
Okay,
him up
there we
again.
go.
It looks like he's gonna try again.
Shall we bring somebody up?
Hey,
Just to
There we
chat?
can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
we
we
can.
Okay.
can.
We can.
Yeah.
You
All right.
back?
So, yeah, I'm here. So just to finish my point, I apologize for rambling. I do think it matters who these people are, and I think the public does need to know. I think that it only benefits basically dishonest, subversive people to be so preoccupied with, you can't know everything that I'm about. I find it very suspicious, and that was a perfect case. And so, and I'm aggressive against these people because, well, honestly, they started it. But I'll let you respond to some of that, and then I could pick up from there because I realize we haven't heard from you in a minute. I'm used to doing a show, so I'll just keep monologuing. So you go ahead.
It's okay. It's just also like I don't know Bab's story. I'm not going to be able to be in a position to defend him, so it's inappropriate kind of to rattle off these stories where they can't defend themselves. And I don't know. I've never even actually like directly talked to the guy. I'm a fan of his work. I'm a fan of his book and his writing. I cited some of his ideas as influences in my own thinking, and I think that's what's the most important when you're assessing the question of illuminating who's a glowy, who's a Fed, who's CIA. I think it's more important to look at what it is that they're actually uh, advocating for and the products of those actions. I wrote a post about conspiracy hermeneutics and the kind of way that conspiracy thesis is formed. You have to, by nature, any piece of information you can't know if it's being obscured or faked. You have to assess it with some degree of skepticism. So the only way to know how true something is by forming like a cluster where there's enough smoke so you can assume there's a fire, but you'll never be able to prove it. In like the question of if somebody's actually a CIA agent or a secret Zionist or whatever it is. you'll never be able to prove it 100%. You can only base it off of these like chain of connections, these associations. But it's very, very corrupt to bias, and easily be fed by paranoia. It's much more practical to just look at what is the output of what they're advocating for. So that's what I assess my peers. As an example for Bat, uh, he's a Nietzschean vitalist. Maybe some accuse it of being a bit homoerotic in his posting. I think he does that as a joke. I don't know, but uh, he's advocating for strength and vitality in young men, and I think that's a very productive thing to advocate for. I don't see why feds would come in and encourage that. It doesn't make sense that it's not productive to the project of protecting the state from a dissident resistance, which is really what this dissident right forms collectively, including your camp. We're all part of general revolutionary movement, very similar to the leftists of the 70s, starting from theory and moving in slowly into institutions and into praxis. But when I look at then your camp and you're being divisive, it does seem to me like that is what a Fed would do. If there was a Fed in the space, they would divide against other people on the right and also invoke a purity spiral. Finding reasons to, as an example, you don't like the Jews. Some people do, some people don't. If they do, though, that doesn't mean that. And you think the Israeli lobby, etc., is bad for America project. I have no opinion on that. I my opinion is that I believe in American liberalism, and I'm looking towards the future where I'm an AI accelerationist. My head's off into 100 years from now. I'm not concerned about these nation state politics. I'm just not like mired in that kind of contemporary politics. But when I look at something like, as an example, Curtis Yarvin's techno-libertarianism, I think there's a lot of great ideas there in his discussion, and I don't think like I saw a video of outside of Passage Presley, some of the gropers were like throwing coins at the guy, and like that's like not that's not conducive to an intellectual discourse. It's just harassment. It's the kind of things you expect the left to do on the right. You don't expect it to come from inside the right. That's my contention.
Well, I would reply to your first point because you said, it doesn't really matter the whom. You said it matters the what, what it is that they
Yes.
say. And I want to read to you a short quote from one of my favorite authors. This is from Palladium magazine. It says, a peculiarity of contemporary American political life should in conclusion be remarked on. It is worth noticing what happens in conversation or debate, in person or in the press, when anyone tries to shift the subject away from discussion of abstract political and foreign policy ideologies, it's to concrete questions of who and whom. If any party wishes to talk not of ideals and philosophy, but about who actually is making the decisions in government, who is their teacher, mentor, associates, and so on, the response from the usual voices in public is vehemently negative. And yet, despite its unpopularity, the greatest insight comes from precisely this type of history. You know who wrote that?
I am guessing Yarvin.
Costin Alamario.
Close.
Dr. Costin Alamario wrote that in Palladium magazine, which is funded by Peter Thiel.
I think he's talking about a different kind of situation, though. We're talking about thinkers, intellectuals.
So he meant well, no, it really not, because he's writing on domestic and foreign policy, and so does Curtis Yarvin. So do all these people, and I follow his advice. I agree, actually, with that praxis, which is the concrete questions of who and whom. Those are the questions that matter. Those are the questions that have always mattered, as opposed to sort of vague ideology. Because, I mean, honestly,
they're not in positions of political influence. They're talking about people in the government. The question is,
Curtis Yarvin is in a position of influence?
You're not in institutional influence. It's only on a theoretical level.
Not over J.D. Vance?
he's not in a role where he's actually has wields political power. It's just intellectual influence.
He has no
But
influence over the vice president?
that's again, it's intellectual or theoretical. It's not. He doesn't hold a seat of power.
Hmm.
But the point is,
He's part of the
there's
cathedral, wouldn't you say?
he's working his way in there. It's a long march into institutions. I'm sure he's talked about that in general with the NRX. That was the recommended strategy: is you influence to the top rather than trying to just instill a populist movement, taking your ideology and Aristotle teaching Alexander the Great, you just influence the people of actual power. But what you're criticizing is their thought, but you're using it on the basis of their, these connections that they supposedly have. With the point being that it's actually the CIA that's ghostwriting this thought for them, and that there's somehow this thought is meant to be productive towards state interests. But then in that case, you can just look at it and see that is it productive to state interest. You don't have to use the entire network of a CIA conspiracy to make that assessment.
It's conducive to somebody's interest, and that's really the question. And that's why I have been preoccupied for the past couple of years with the who and the whom when you look at JD Vance, because and you can't have it all ways. I mean, you can say, well, you follow a Curtis Yarvin. Well, Curtis Yarvin says that the real seat of power is the cathedral. He says the real seat of power is a priestly class of intellectuals, which certainly Yarvin and his acolytes, these so-called dark intellectuals, like you just said, they are marching through the institutions like the radicals from the 70s and trying to take over the seat of power. And that is embodied by somebody like Vance, who is obviously comes from this scene because he was mentored and received money from Thiel, and he's mutuals with all these people and so on. So contrary to what you say about, well, we just need to focus on the ideas and like when we got to not talk about who these people really are. I think that's all we have to talk about is who they really are. And
What if,
as to when I want to get into
Vance is
something
on
else,
your side, Nick. I mean, he
he's
might not
so
be
not on my
100%.
side.
Come on,
No,
he's at Tim Walz versus Vance. Vance is
he's married
80%
to an
of the
Indian.
reports are.
He's on my side.
Yeah, well, come on, you're an Italian Mexican, so I mean it evens out.
He doesn't value his race, is the point. He married somebody who's a first generation immigrant. And, I said that during the election. Everybody said it was an ignorant racist statement. I think it's pretty straightforward. If somebody marries outside their race, it means that they probably don't value their race. And he says as much in his book. He says that his culture is so backwards and he was so disgusted by it that he married somebody that far outside of his culture and race. It's in his book. And point is, someone like that does not
Your purity
actually share
spiraling.
my values.
Your purity spiraling. Why does he have to be
How is that a
100%
purity
there?
spiral?
You need him to be 100%. Why?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's not a question of purity. It's a question of if a person values their race and their heritage, it's something they wouldn't do. It's got nothing to do with purity. It's just got
Yeah,
to do
okay.
with, if I go and
No, I don't
like
mean
I'm
purity of
Catholic.
blood. I mean
But
that of the things that he stands for or believes in, one of them, racial purity is not a concern for him. But
not
most of the other
purity.
points,
Why do you say purity?
but not race, being a race traitor, maintaining your white.
What percentage white is Usha Vance?
I think you're
Zero.
misunderstanding my point. If you look at like the list of things that Vance stands for and believes in, compared to the general um, politician, the average median, or even on the right, he's like 80% there. Just because there might be some violations that don't agree with you, he's not concerned about a white purity bloodline. You're throwing him out completely. It's a purity
You're using
spiral.
that word though, purity. It's got nothing to do with purity. It's got to do with what do you value? And the basis of a nationalist movement says that we value our people, that there is something essential about race that made America the way it is. If America were 400 million Nigerians, it would be different than it was 400 million white people. So that is essential to our worldview. If somebody marries the first generation immigrant from Asia, it would follow then that they really don't share our values. And I would say the same, by the way, about like any liberal, like Bari Weiss. Bari Weiss is a lesbian. She doesn't share my values. Is that a purity spiral? She's got a female partner, and it is what it is. You may be more liberal on that. I know Adrian probably is. Many people are. As a Catholic, that's completely contrary to my worldview. As a consequence,
it seems to come off as you're finding excuses to throw people out of your movement and have a reason why nobody is good enough.
That's not true. I like Michelle Malkin.
It can go both ways too. A white ethno-nationalist movement for America. The precedent is the nativist movements, like the 1850s to Know Nothing movement or the original Ku Klux Klan. You must be familiar. I don't mean the Hollywood racist, black-hating lynch mobs of Ku Klux Klan, but the actual movement that you must appreciate that they were anti-Semite, but also they were anti-Catholic. They were very concerned about the Catholic immigration. That was their number one concern, because they considered it fundamentally alien to the original heritage American. So, maybe you could make the same argument for a white Christian ethno-state. You'd have to roll it back not to the 1920, or really it was 1965 when the Irish Catholic and the Italian Catholics began to become opened up along with the rest of the world, but in 1924 when there were still strong restrictions. But I assume you'd also agree that it wouldn't be very conducive to your goals to maintain that strict purity spiral. It has to be only the WASP ethno-state rather than a general white Christian ethno-state.
You're bringing up things that have nothing to do with the subject at hand, which is, we represent in this time, that was 100 years ago, in the intervening 60 years between 65 and today, we've had 40 million immigrants come in here, probably more, that the vast majority of them are not white and not Christian. It's fundamentally transforming the fabric of the country. And it's really simple. There are people that think that this is extremely urgent and existential. It's going to threaten the existence of the essence of America and has to be arrested and reversed. And then there are people that don't really care about that at all, or they think that race is actually not determinative and it's a factor that doesn't matter. I fall into the former category. And people like Vance, and by the way, that whole ilk that champion this colorblind meritocracy stuff, obviously they disagree. People that say that it's a question of citizenship or it's a question of legal status or how much taxes they're paying or something like that. It's a difference in values. And point being is, I don't know why all of a sudden you're defending Vance. All I'm saying is I disagree with him. All I'm saying is we have to look at who they are. Yarvin, Vance, Thiel, Bapp. We have to look at who they are. And we have to be aware of what their values are, what their connections are. And I think that we're really not on the same page. And you ask me, why am I being divisive? Why am I being aggressive? I'm not. It didn't start out that way. Initially, I was like you. And I said, Bapp says things that are similar enough until he started attacking the Groypers. And I liked Passage Press and Sovereign House until they banned me. I was in talks with somebody to do an event at Sovereign House. And one of the owners of Sovereign House, Nick Allen, was open to the idea. What?
Okay, you're going
we're
off
kind of
on
spiraling. Yeah, we're kind of spiraling here. Something that
this is about the subject at hand. You said, "Why am I divisive?"
Actually, Nick, I want to ask something.
Let me just say one thing there.
Hang on.
Let me just say one thing there.
Don't say Nick Allen.
No, I don't care, Nick Allen. It comes off to me like you're acting whiny. And you're complaining about old views.
So you
all right.
whining about divisiveness.
Okay, guys, calm down. All right, look, Nick, let me ask you
why are
something.
you rattling this off? I don't even,
Yeah, is
I
my
don't
mic
know about
actually
any of
working
this
or is it
history.
broken?
Can you hear Adrian?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay, cool.
Charlotte, can you hear Adrian?
Yes.
Okay,
Go
cool.
ahead, Adrian.
All right, guys. So something I want to ask you, Nick, is let's say someone is of a different race, but they do, to a certain fundamental point, embrace some of the values that are important to the country in which you're in. Would that be fine? Because I think your whole struggle is more so about values than it is about race. Is that correct?
No, it is very much about race. And
Fuck.
if there is an individual, well, and let me put it this way. I think that we can have people that are not white in America. There are people that are not white in America. There's large numbers of them. But if America becomes mostly people that are not white, it will be a different country. And you can argue whether that's acceptable or not, but you cannot argue that it won't be a different country. And as somebody that, I grew up in a neighborhood that was 95% white, it will be irreversibly and fundamentally changed by something like that. And I want to preserve that way of living. And that's the clash in values. But I mean, to
I
me, I
actually
don't.
don't disagree with you there.
Okay.
But I think the idea of rolling back the clock is untenable. I do agree with you that there needs to be a massive immigration reform and one that's a lot more self-conscious, including in terms of ethnicity and culture and religion. But also, you know, not to keep drilling back to your own like personal status. I'm not doing it to insult you, but
Mhm.
um, it was true too of like, for example, the Italian Catholics in Chicago. I believe you're from. That was the same scenario. People had the very identical concerns. Because when we talk about, even I actually agree that it's not just philosophy. There's an element of blood that factors into people's personality and character. The apple never falls far from the tree. You can see it from point of son to father. But that was also, an Anglo-Saxon Protestants. It is a big deviation from, the Mediterranean as an example, and that was also something that was well, discussed by the founding fathers. You must be familiar with like Benjamin Franklin's Nordicist racism.
Yeah, well, but this is the kind of thing. I actually like what JD Vance said in that interview where he said, just because we're a nation of immigrants 300 years ago doesn't mean we have to have. And I feel the same way about this. I mean, this is the same kind of, well, the Italians weren't considered white. Yeah, that was 100 years ago. But the question now is, in this demographic transition worldwide, as all these countries become minority white, is whiteness worth preserving? I'm not here to debate about the know nothings or these various nativist movements from 100 or 200 years ago. I'm here to talk about the demographic transition happening today. But I am curious because I'm really not as interested in debating this with you, with the race of America. I'm interested in the crux of the issue, which is Peter Thiel. That's why we're here. It's what we laid out at the beginning. And you said that you basically accused me of being a Fed, or said that I behave in a way that you would think a Fed would behave because of my needless divisiveness. I started to explain why I'm aggressive towards these people, kind of the genesis of that. And you say, wait, no, let's not talk about that. You said, that sounds whiny. And I'm curious, why don't you want to? Do you not want me to talk about Nick Allen and Sovereign House? I mean, what is the
No,
issue there?
it's you're repeating lines that you've said many times on the shows. People have seen it. I saw all those clips as soon as we interacted. I don't even know any of these stories. It's not like I'm trying to protect them. Like, don't add me to the conspiracy line that now I'm also part of this Talmudic network. I frankly, the whole deal conspiracy seems very dubious to me. Do you think that he's actually like coordinating and influencing them towards some directions, like selecting what kind of parties are thrown at Sovereign House or what books Passage Press is publishing? Um, they seem to just be part of a general movement of a dissident right. It makes a lot of sense. I can see the same kind of influences that, we both grew up with online, and the same kind of general conversations and spaces. They just happen to go into one direction while you've gone into another. Uh,
Look, this is something that has been going on for as long as there's been a CIA. It used to be called the Congress for Cultural Freedom. You know, would you have said in the 1950s and 60s, like, do you really think William F. Buckley Jr. is receiving money from the CIA? At the time, you might have said, no, that's a ludicrous conspiracy theory. But the Congress for Cultural Freedom was backing all of actually the intellectual antecedents of this current movement.
but Nick,
So yeah,
you
I
have the
do. Wait,
same. You
are you
have the
just going to
same
interrupt me the whole time?
allegations.
Are you going to
You've
interrupt me
got
the
this.
whole time?
You've got the same
Are
allegations
you going
against.
wait? Can I finish a sentence, or are you going to interrupt me the whole time? Because I think I've not been interrupting you.
Okay, you're right. Go ahead.
So, thank you. So no, I do think I don't think that when you say conspiracy, you know, the subtext of that is it's kookery. You know, it's a tinfoil hat. It's not credible. I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy fact. If you follow the money, if you follow the associations, you will find that, like you said, there is this vast network. You characterize it as a sort of organic, spontaneous coming together of like-minded people. I think that there is a little more to the story there. I think that there is some intentionality. And we can start with the fact that, you know, across the board, all of these projects, look, there are a lot of Jewish people in them, and none of them are critical of Israel. None of them are critical of the Israel lobby. And people that talk too much about that sort of stuff, they're not welcome in that network. And so I don't think I am the divisive one. I think that for as long as I've been doing this, when I was being merely pro-white or right-wing or something like that, I was accepted. The moment that I started to lean too much into criticism or skepticism of Israel's influence, among other things, that is when I became unwelcome. And I think that really is the division. You know that because Thiel goes on Bari Weiss's show. Thiel backs national conservatism, which is run by Hazony. And you say you've heard all this before and so on. Well, these are the relevant facts in the conversation. I mean, Yoram Hazony banned me from NatCon. Nick Allen and future Moldovan citizen banned me from Sovereign House. BAP attacked the first Groyper Leadership Summit. I never fired the first shot. And by the way, Peter Brimelow got banned from NatCon, run by Yoram Hazony. So it's like, it has
Nick,
been made clear.
I don't
Go
even
ahead.
know.
Go ahead.
I don't even know like half these names and people that you're rattling off.
Well, then you're ignorant.
Okay, I think
How
what
are
we
you
can
equipped
do.
to debate?
Okay, I think what we can do
You're
here
battling your
is
old personal wounds.
right. So here's what we're
You're
gonna
licking
do.
your lips.
Everybody makes one point, and then there's a response. This happens on both sides because I feel like, you know, okay, so Charlotte likes to make very compressed points. Nick, you like to kind of elaborate a lot. And I think everything is interconnected with everything. So I could literally start rattling off about how assembly works. And then basically I would begin by saying, I need to first invent the universe. So instead of reinventing the universe, I think we should stick to individual points. So Nick, you make one. Then Charlotte makes one, back and forth, and you can address each other's points. Because if we make too many points in connection with one another, then we don't actually have a conversation. Okay, so if we could do that, that would be great.
Yeah. So my point is simple, which is I'm not divisive. People like me have been they have tried to destroy me for my particular views. It's not divisive to fight back. That's my point.
Okay, well, I've been in a very similar situation, so I think that's fair to feel that way. I think right now, with Trump's win, I understand you have your qualms with his current campaign, and you've been hesitant to trust, you know, his whatever moves he's been making. But we are in a new right renaissance. We are winning. We've won, and we're pushing the advantage. And I don't know why you would take this time to keep picking at these old wounds and other people on the right instead of just joining with this new front and pushing the advantage.
Okay, well, I'll answer with one singular point. Why am I not just joining up with the new right? Because Trump signed an executive order saying they're going to direct all of government to shut down anti-Semitism. Am I
I
not
saw that.
somebody that has been, and by the way, I don't identify that way, but am I not someone that has been accused of anti-Semitism? So, it's sort of hard for me there were like, at the Passage Press party, the one that you were at and the one that you hosted the after party for, so
I
many
didn't
of the
attend.
people there, that were there have tried to destroy me. People like Steve Bannon, and it's not picking at old wounds, but you're asking, why won't I just join up with them? It's because they want to destroy me and my movement, and for one very good reason. You could take a wild guess, but we'd have to get into the who and the whom rather than their abstract, Nietzschean vitalism or whatever, whatever
It's
they want to call that.
it's an ethnic war. And if one ethnic lobby has money, and they're using that for influence, it's just what it is. Naturally, you'll defend your own race. I'm sure you see that yourself. You do this very same. It's a natural incentive. But I don't think it's a conspiracy. All What you have to do is you just win by having more influence and better political positioning. And I'm not saying you need to join up with anybody, but you can make tentative diplomatic friendships or truces, and just you know you experienced a very serious deplatforming, and you've now come back. You're getting platformed again, and you don't need to be in this attack dog mode, rather than just taking your platform and putting out your influence, putting out your views. Doing the space, I got a lot of pushback. People were saying that, like, I can't platform Nick Fuentes. I told him that first of all, I'm like, I believe in platforming anybody. I think everybody should be able to express their views, and just, if you don't agree with them, debate them. But also, second, you have your platform. It's not like you don't have a stream every day with your followers. But why isolate it, rather than just entering the conversation with everybody else? I don't know any of the history between all these other players. I'm just like, I just got suddenly caught up in the middle of it. But all I stand for is I don't engage in these contemporary politics so much as I'm just interested in the actual ideals. And maybe these guys are, but for me, it's philosophy. It's about American liberalism.
Yeah, I guess I'm just sort of confused because, sometimes you'll say you don't know any of the lore and you don't know the people. And then other times you say, yeah, these are your talking points. We've heard this before. And all I'm trying to say when I spell this kind of stuff out is because, exactly what you're saying, I would describe that as the first 5 years of my career, what you're describing, which is, look for agreement, and try to form a broad coalition and try to gain influence that way. That was the first 4 or 5 years of my career. And what has effectively happened is that the more that you push on one particular issue, the more that you get pushed back on, and you're right. If I were to change my whole MO and what I talk about, I'm sure they would all these people in this vast network would love to work with me. But it is my obstinate refusal not to omit or censor that part, which is why they won't. It's not for lack of willingness to participate or cooperate in the network. I would love for Bronze Age Pervert to join the space right now, or Lomez, or any of them. And I've been clear about that for a very long time. It is that group that says they will not interact with or talk to or promote anybody that they deem anti-Semitic. That's just a fact.
I,
And so,
my my
and
impression is it's not anti-Semitism; it's the doxing that's the concern. It's
no, that's not,
there's
see, no,
harassment.
that's not it. That's absolutely not it. It is the fact
And
that
there
we are talking about those things. It's
and
got,
by the
and by
way,
the way, I didn't dox
let
you.
me.
You've been doxed.
Well, you did use your
So is
platform to
Bronze
send
Age
those there.
Pervert.
You promoted it on your platform. Now, for me, it didn't matter. That was like, I've long been through it, but you don't know that like that could have been something that would escalate into something that could create threats on family, or that
Oh,
kind of thing. It's
please.
the same. Oh, it's the same as your house getting posted. You mentioned like 20,000 impressions.
Completely different because I've always used my real name and face. It's completely different.
It's the
And
same situation where it's an attempt to silence somebody by making them feel
so
uncomfortable
which is
sharing
it
whatever
then?
they want.
Is it that I'm unwilling to be a good sport and talk with them, and I'm the one that's the problem, or is it
I,
their refusal but for doxing and not another reason? Which is it?
I got caught up in the middle. I can't say. I don't know. I just think
Okay.
it's unfortunate that things are at this level. And by the way, when you mentioned, like, I say that sometimes I don't know, sometimes I do. It's just because I saw clips of your show where you talked about, the whole conspiracy network. Because I tried to understand what was it, what's the issue here. So I didn't know until last week.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like I've been saying a very consistent message throughout and on my show and here and elsewhere, which is, and I told you at the very beginning what I stand for. For the things that I say, I have been attacked by these people. And it's because we don't share values, fundamental values. And then I fight back, or I try to say here, I try to sort of explicate why we don't agree and why there's a sharp difference. And then I get told I'm whining, or then I get told, some other thing or whatever. I just feel like I'm putting out a very simple and straightforward message. And there's all this kind of like ad hoc equivocation coming from you and from these people, because I think I've been very crystal clear about what I'm about, and about the history, the record. I'm totally transparent and open about the whole thing. None of these people want to, like, you, to your credit, you came to the space. I'm curious who told you not to come, because I called you out. And by the way, I called you out because the Ethereum founder, Vitalik, or whatever, however you pronounce his name, he
Mhm.
attacked
Vitalik.
me for Vitalik. He attacked me for saying some of these connections. And all I did was lay out the connections. And he replies and says, this guy doesn't even know how to sig hail. What a terrible Nazi. So it's like, to your credit, you came to the space, but all these other people, for one reason or another, they don't want to show up. And I think that's kind of indicative of the whole thing. Who's really the problem? Am I divisive? I'm sitting here saying I would, in a civil way and cordially speak to any one of them, in spite of the fact that, by the way, they have doxed me. They have participated in a hard dox of me and of my followers. And I would talk to any one of them. But they won't reciprocate that. And I think that's because they're a part of a network that is pushing a very specific agenda. And that is contrary to what you're characterizing it as, which is a spontaneous, organic, coming together of people. I think they have a very specific agenda, and I don't agree with it. And that's really what it amounts to.
Um, yeah, and by the way, when I say people, it wasn't any of them. That I didn't talk to any of them about this space. It was just people from the community, people, ladies on both sides.
Mhm.
There's people in our community who think you're a fed. There's people who think you're like a great, they're your fans. I just listen to both sides. But, um, my concern too, before going out, was like, is this guy going to use a platform to like harass and smear me and my family? Uh, you kept it very civil. I appreciate that. So that's what other people were warning me, that it might become dirty. And that
Mhm.
would have been deciding whether or not to do this. That was my biggest concern. Like, is this going to be a serious conversation? Um, Listen, I believe in what I believe in. I'm an independent person. Remilia we represent. Honestly, I understand why we have crossover, because we're a big tent. We're an umbrella community to just any kind of free speech and dissident state movement. We on all sides. When you mention like things like, I don't know, lesbian, LGBT, we have that in our community too. But it's the beauty of it is that they're all brushing shoulders, and even if they get in arguments and fight, they're still kept under the same tent. And that's why when I look at what I mean, I haven't seen your show. I'm vaguely familiar. I've seen your memes. I've seen the funny clips. You're a funny guy, but suddenly I interact with you, and there's like all this drama and dirt being flung around. Even like Vital, like you're calling him deal backed because he received a Founders Fund grant back in like 2015. I mean, you must know that Thiel is not involved in Ethereum. Like you can't tie it
What?
into. Come on.
I
You
called them
really think
Thiel
that?
backed. And even though he received founders fund money, that's the definition of backing. And,
I mean, do you think Thiel is involved in like directing any of Ethereum's development? It's extremely decentralized.
By definition, he is involved. Yes.
Okay.
By definition.
I think there is discrepancy. It's like not backing, but backed in the past. It's like, say for instance, if Elon had he donated, I think it was $100 million to OpenAI back in the day. That doesn't mean that he's backing OpenAI. Quite the contrary, actually. He backed, in that sense, financially, OpenAI back then, right? So from this perspective, you could say it's like back, not backing, right?
To include Thiel in the conversation around Ethereum because of that, you're implying that Thiel is somehow manipulating its direction and influencing it. There's
a lot of overlap. I mean, like Nick Allen is a big Ethereum guy, and he rolls at Sovereign House with the Thiel people. Isn't Allen's dad in the CIA? Aren't his parents in the CIA?
I don't know.
I hope I'm not stepping on any toes with that, but it's like, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. It's like all these people whose parents are in the CIA, they're all tech people, they're all running in the same circles in the same network. So yeah, I mean, obviously Thiel didn't like create Ethereum himself, but and by the way, Founders Fund is not just about the money, it's about the network that is created. So he might have gotten a small loan of $100,000, if that's how you want to put it, a long time ago. But he clearly is part of that vast network. And who replied to his tweet? Polymarket. Polymarket replied retardio to his tweet. Polymarket, Peter Thiel's an investor in Polymarket. So, it's like, and, Sovereign House, which is run by Alan, who's an Ethereum guy. Sov House hosted Passage Press's Passage Prize, who publishes Yarvin, who's Peter Thiel's guy. So it's like, you don't want to hear the connections, but you also say it's this vast conspiracy, and I don't really buy that. There it is.
This is like you're really stretching it thin here.
Okay. Well, people can judge if they think it's a stretch.
I can tell you at least, like Ethereum, Peter Thiel is not involved in the Ethereum Foundation. You can see if you want to go and dig into it, it's quite transparent. In the history of Ethereum, it's played out transparently with a lot of decentralization, and also it's again going back to the what. This is not something that CIA state actors would be interested in at all promoting. It's very distinctly it undermines the entire Federal Reserve and like nation states themselves by producing an uncensorable currency of the people. So again, it's just that's. I don't know about all the rest, but that's you're really stretching it there with Ethereum. I have to say that, and the Polymarket too. I mean, they're built on Ethereum. Like of course they're going to interact with the founder. I mean, that's like come on.
So a company that Thiel's and but see, and that maybe is really the issue. But I mean, if you don't find that convincing, then okay, people can decide for themselves. But maybe there's another area to go into what you just said, which is why would a group which is promoting vitalism and an uncensorable currency, why would they be backed by the CIA or by the Mossad or by whatever? And I think it's pretty well. In the first place, they just are identical with them. There's identity, there was a consortium put together when Trump won the election with Palantir, OpenAI, SpaceX, to bid for government contracts. So by definition, people like Palmer Luckey, who's from Facebook, and his Anduril makes drones that get put I think he makes drones. They're deeply connected.
Facebook. He created Oculus, which was acquired by Meta, so that's a little bit. This is a separate thing, and he was actually ousted from Facebook. Yeah, he was like ousted from Facebook because of his political opinions.
How did he get ousted if he wasn't there?
My dude, he wasn't at Facebook from like the way that you're describing it, as if he was just a worker there. No, he was literally part of the company. It's Oculus, which got acquired by Meta, basically Facebook back then, effectively.
I know, but
he actually got fired because of his political views, and his political views was supporting Donald Trump.
And I know that story, but it's like
Nick is that's how they're all. He's doing Anduril, which is a defense company.
Yes, and Anduril, and Anduril's backed by Thiel. Okay. And so people like that, and Oculus, who invested in Oculus, Andreessen Horowitz. So, all these people, they're defense contractors. So you could, we could sit here and argue, what is the benefit of pushing this? We almost have to argue that with the assumption that they are, because they are defense and intelligence contractors, and they're backing this political project. So the question should be better said: why is the defense and intelligence community pushing vitalism? That's actually the right question, because whether they are or not, it's a factual matter. You could Google it or ask ChatGPT; it's there. So I think the reason they're
Yeah, but what's the problem with people investing in something that they believe has profit in the future, like it yields profit? I mean, if, for instance, I would have the opportunity to invest in Adurel and I had the money to do so, I would do it, actually, because it's a very interesting project. And I think it is, important for, warfare in general. And warfare in general means defending the thing that you have, which is, a nation. So why wouldn't you invest in it? I don't understand. How is that a bad thing?
Yeah, I'm not against investment in itself. That's not my problem.
This comes back to what I mentioned about conspiracy hermeneutics, where you can take all these chains of information and interpret it in different ways to form a narrative, but you're projecting also, the narrative you're looking for onto it. It's kind of funny because with Vermilia, a lot of the reason why we have these trolls and this bait that's just out there in our lore is specifically as a kind of, we're actually artists, and it's an artistic critique or a satire of this process of conspiracy making. Because if you put out information and it's something that people want to be true, then they're more likely to take it up and and put it into the narratives that they're already forming. And they form these webs. You put out a few different nodes, and then they'll convince themselves of projection. So I mean, you've built a very stretched web here. It sounds strong. It's like, okay, you've gone out to go and connect like Palmer Luckey and Anduril and Palantir, all to prove that Peter Thiel is a defense agent. He invests in defense, and he's also investing in these other things. He's also just an investor, and he clearly has unique views and things that he talks about. Like I believe he's. You mentioned Vance and Girard. I believe that comes from Peter Thiel's discussions of Girard. And he's referenced Nietzsche in talks before. It does make sense that maybe also authentically he has these latent interests on the side, and it's not directly related to every other thing that touches him. And maybe it is, but the people that he's investing into, they're, even if he was a conspiracy mastermind that's like nudging things over into a direction to produce some kind of long-term project. They're not going to be getting direct orders. It's all in direct coordination, and it might just be as much as just not wanting to offend. If your major investor is Jewish, you're not going to go and post anti-Israeli things, and that's why you get these levels of awkwardness around what's is an un-PC topic. Even now on the right, as far as free speech and everything, it's just a very sensitive topic because of that capital inflows. But that doesn't mean it's a giant conspiracy. It's just a product of capital coordination. I mean, there's a large Israel lobby that has been operating for 50 years to reach this level of influence. I mean, frankly, when I look at your political project, I don't really understand why you're not also attempting to do the same and just fund an actual lobby in DC for a white Christian identity initiative. Every other minority group has one. Obviously, you couldn't do it anytime until now, but now is a time where there'd be political motion where they would accept you into DC. I don't know. It's just a thought when I look at your work this week. That's just how the game is played. It's influence, it's coordination and position.
I think Nick has another one of those connection issues.
Yeah, his thing disappeared.
Yeah. I kind of want to get back when he comes back. I do want to kind of shift back to the whole cultural discussion, I think, which I believe is the most relevant, because we can like talk about potential connections and what they might mean, or we could talk about the stuff that we actually agree slash disagree on. I think when it comes to like values, he continues to mention values. He kind of like wraps them up in this conceptual connection stuff that he keeps doing, right? Which is
I'm
fine.
bringing
Which
it
is
back.
fine. It's just that I think we should discuss the crux of whatever culture he's trying to like put through. Specifically, I actually want to address something about the country changing type of thing, or countries themselves changing. But
I think he's back.
Hey,
and
yeah, I was. Hey, can you hear me now?
yes, we can.
Yep.
Hey, so I was just going to say, in response to what you just said, it's sort of interesting because you say, on the one hand, you say, oh, well, they're not really directing people to say things. There's not a top-down conspiracy just because you've put together this web of connections. At the same time, you say, though, maybe they don't want to offend their Jewish investors, and that's why they don't talk about Israel or the Jewish topic. And yeah, I mean, it's a principle called subsidiarity, which is to say that, like Fox News is not going to tell Tucker Carlson, here's what you're going to say tonight. But if Tucker Carlson deviates from what Rupert Murdoch wants, Fox News will terminate him. Case in point. And so really it's a difference without a distinction. Maybe they're not directing it from the top down and writing the script for every shit poster on Twitter who's part of the network, but every shit poster who's part of the network knows that if they cross over into certain territory and it's going to get them in trouble, then they're not going to do it. Or, they don't receive the money if they're identified as having the wrong opinion or something. That's really the point. And that's why it matters who they are. That's the whole question from the very beginning. Why does it matter if someone's getting money from Thiel or 1 or 2 degrees of separation? It's for the reason I just said, which is that, if there's money flowing to them, which is coming from these sources, which is coming from, Thiel runs Palantir with Alex Karp. And all you have to do is look up who Alex Karp is and what he said to understand that what you're saying is the reality. You have said the actual truth. When you say people don't want to offend Jews in Israel because the investor is Jewish, Alex Karp, Google him and what he has said about the far right in Europe, about his fear of being defenestrated by Christian nationalists.
Mhm.
Case in point. So anyway, so with that, I guess we've exhausted that topic. If I heard Adrian said he wants to get more into culture, which I'm fine with if we want to talk about. You said you're a liberal. We could talk about that or whatever else. But yeah, that just to wrap up a bow on what I've been saying the whole time. It's like I do disagree with that network, and the network is closed. It is closed. They do not want to hear from Catholic, critics of Israel. And you know that because I'm not the only one that's banished from it. Anyone who's associated with me is banished from it. Anyone who has my views is banished from it. So anyway, so that's that.
I just I just don't think it's the anti-Semitism. I'm not going to name names, but there are anti-Semites in that network too. It's not like you're the only one to be.
There are not.
Okay. Adrian, do you want to move on to the?
Yeah, I do want to move on to the
culture
culture part.
questions?
But so, Charlotte, how open are you with your identity? Like, race-wise, belief-wise, like how open are you?
It's like I'm doxxed. People have like looked me up. I think it's irrelevant to my general online presence, but I'm a Kashmiri pundit. I'm Indian, so it's often a subject of attack.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially with what's what's been happening over the last couple months. Of course, I'm pretty sure you were aware of the whole H-1B situation. It was a great time to start it, by the way. This whole argument, around Christmas time, where everybody like who normally works very hard goes to spend time with their family. Luckily for me, I'm a person who is constantly active because I love the internet. So I was there when all of this melted down, which was absolutely fascinating. But kind of to the point, though, I think that where I think Nick and I would, for instance, disagree on the idea of values and representing them. I think it is very telling of a nation when someone who is foreign represents that nation's values more than the people within the nation itself who were born there, for instance. Because I think let's say you have what is a white feminist, or you have an Indian who is not a feminist and who is then also someone who represents my exact values as a white person, if I would happen to be one who now lives in America, right? So let's take that as an example. Who should I be dating? Who should I be marrying? Who's better for the country?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
I think that these kinds of questions obscure the reality, because there's a
That
question
is
of
the
scale.
reality. That is the reality. The reality is that quite a large percentage of the population that would otherwise be very suitable for, say, carrying on the next generation are just incapable of doing so because their brain has been rotted by all the nonsense that they've ingested because of the society that has fallen. I think you would even
But you
agree
do
that
this-
society has fallen.
You do this kind of like would you rather. I don't like would you rather questions because we can use politics to shape society. You know, so people will say things like,
"True, but you cannot,
would
unfuck this. You cannot unfuck this. This is the thing, unless, of course, you
True,
want to."
but well, wait. But how do you characterize a situation being fucked? Because I'll give you really good examples. Poland and Russia became communist for a century, and everything was fucked. It was completely fucked. But when communism ended, they were still Poland and Russia. If
But
the United States becomes full of non-white people, it could be communist or capitalist. It will irreversibly be changed and never be the same as it was.
But
So I think that's worse.
Here's why I don't think the communist argument necessarily works here. If you look at communism, it was a atheistic ideology. But if you look at the communist countries, most of the people there were still Christian. They were still participating as Christians.
Not in
They
Russia.
were hiding it, and when it Russia is still significantly Christian, even if
No,
they
it
don't
isn't.
behave like it.
No, it's like 20% Christian. It's not Christian at all. They totally eradicated Christianity. That's the whole point. But Putin is trying to plant the seed of Christianity again, and you can do that when there's continuity. That's the continuity that can't be undone.
Just a little correction there. According to like a 2020 study, there 82% of Russians identify as Christian.
No, that's not right.
What's what it says here?
What it says where?
Even if we look at Poland, though, Poland was significantly more Christian under communism than it is currently under the liberal ideology.
I don't think you're understanding, though. I don't think you're understanding the point, which is that, whatever you're trying to say, well, it's really arbitrary. The point is the values can change, but the people have continuity. And you seem to care more about the kind of immediate governance of the country. And by immediate, I don't mean like next year. I mean like in 100 years. And I'm talking more about the family tree. I'm talking more about the bloodline. And Germany has gone through, monarchy, National Socialism, communism, democracy, but they remain German. If over the course of this century you have unlimited Africans move there, it won't be German anymore. And that's the kind of continuity that I'm concerned about. And I just don't see. Some people don't care. I care. I mean, that's just a first principle. Do you think race is an essential characteristic? Genetics, all of that. I think they absolutely are.
I think if you're not going to have a birth rate because the people of that country are fucked or they can't find a proper mate, and you're basically stuck in a position where you're going to have one kid and it's with a feminist, in that situation, you're way worse off because there's not even going to be a future of the country in 1,000 years if that's how you're going to continue.
In what way, though? In what way? Because some country like Japan is shrinking and it will continue to shrink. And you say, well, it's fucked. And what you're referring to is a permanent recession and then ultimately the threat of extinction. But the Japanese people can always, that is where I would say you can use technology or politics to solve that problem. But you're saying, well, they're going to go extinct anyway. It's like, well, maybe we'll see after 100 years, and maybe they can reinvent themselves. But if you bring in, because that's what they're talking about now, we have to bring in all these immigrants to South Korea and Japan because of their terminal low fertility rate. It's like, well, now you're ensuring that it won't exist. Their culture, their genetics, their bloodline will not be preserved. And that to me is the saddest thing, because it's like, that's our face. When I look in the mirror and I see my face, that's me. My face is an essential part of who I am, and my face is a genetic characteristic. If in 100 years the country is filled with people that don't share my face, then I'm extinct. So it really does not matter to me if those people are liberal or conservative or communist. What matters to me is that they're still me, that we're part of a larger unit. An extended family, which would be race. And that goes for all Europeans. Indians, there's 1.5 billion Indians in the world. How many white people are there? There's 450 million in Western Europe. I don't know how many there are here. 60% of, so it's 200 and some million, maybe. But there's far fewer white people.
Out of curiosity, Nick, what do you consider just a single white Caucasoid race is relevant, or do you factor between, like, for example, are you fine with mass Ukrainian and Russian immigration to America as long as they're white, or do you consider like there needs to be a need for a certain ethnic makeup between the different European nations to construct an ideal future American?
I think that we should have no immigration for now. Honestly, but I'm really, but here's the thing. I don't have really a propositionally positive position, because something is happening now. The positive proposition is the mass immigration that we have now. And I'm saying I don't want that. You have all these non-white people moving here, have been moving here now. I'm saying I don't want that. And people say, well, would you like 100 million Russians to come here? It's like, no, I just don't want what's happening now to go on. And now, if we were to create and say, well, what would an immigration policy look like? I think that, look, we're a country. Immigration should be a very small number relative to the broader population. What's the purpose of immigration? Right now, the purpose of immigration is to replace those that would have been born if we had a healthy fertility rate. I don't support that kind of immigration. I think we should bring in immigrants who, if they're really exceptional artists or scientists, I think we should bring in a very, very small number of them. Or if they're workers that need to fill a certain role, we should bring them in on a temporary basis. Those are the immigration categories that I support. But the idea that the native people won't have kids, so we're going to bring in other people to replace their would-be kids, categorically, I don't support that kind of immigration. That's the definition of replacement, whether it's Russians, Africans, Asians, it's a distinction without a difference. And I think the government...
But the problem is it's evolutionary. It's a Darwinism. It's like social Darwinism, effectively. That is the problem. If you already have come to a certain point where now inevitably you reach failure, there needs to be a foreign ingredient that fixes this to a certain extent. Because look, things are not fixing themselves. When you look at Japan, for instance, they're extremely isolated. They have an extremely isolationist culture, and they've had this type of culture for thousands of years. And where has it led them? Right. So
I think historically the American original Puritan colonies, they did just grow independently. They didn't even have much mixture between the different colonies. So it is absolutely possible. It's true for most nation states too. While there is some mixing, it's fine for a race to grow internally. I actually don't disagree with Nick in a kind of strong shutdown of immigration and a focus on fertility policy inside the nation with only high-skilled immigration. Honestly, what I wonder, though, is Nick, you're obviously a white nationalist and very concerned about saving the white race. But isn't that a bit like the white race itself? Don't you define, a little bit more fine-grained than that? There's not... even the American was always understood as a certain almost new race, as a product of not just the Anglo-Saxon, but the other admixture from the Nordics, and then a second wave of Mediterranean. That's why I ask about like Russia, there hasn't been a large movement of Slavic blood into America. But when you define just a general, white Christian, you open that up, and that would change the constitution of American, blood character.
Yeah, I mean there are a lot of Slavic people. It just depends on where you go. Like Poland, they think Chicago is like the largest Polish community outside of Poland. It's like millions of them. They're not Russians, but they're Slavic. Um, but I think that, I mean, I guess I get what you're saying, but I would say America is an established country. So no, I don't think we should have massive amounts of immigration at this point from any country for that matter. Like I said, I really support immigration because immigration's a policy. We can choose who comes in here and who doesn't. And I think why should we let them in? Because they help our country. And to me, what's beneficial is they provide their skills, they provide their art, and that happens in a very limited quantity or for a temporary basis. And that's it. But it's not to come over here to be, setting up colonies. Because that, even with Polish people, that is sort of in effect what they do. Like a lot of Polish people, it's funny. My grandmother's like sort of racist, and she doesn't like the Polish people more than anybody. She's very old school, she's different generation. She's 80 some years old, and she gets along with the Hispanics and even the black people. She's like, Polish people don't speak English and blah blah blah. And irony being is like, this is just another kind of diversity, and they're setting up another kind of colony. And it's like, I just want to live in America. I want to live in America, and America's distinct. So whether they're coming from one place or another, at this point, it doesn't matter to me. But the question is really, go ahead.
I don't even disagree with you. I'm just curious about, because you're looking at like, the immigration shutdown now, but I mentioned earlier, I'm thinking in terms of like 50, 100 years from now as a future American immigration policy. What seems to make sense to me is a lot of self-awareness about a selective immigration. And really, even when we talk about just, well, what are high skill jobs that we need right now, that's still just thinking about the short term, the next 10 years. When anybody we bring in, they're going to marry, they're going to have kids, and it really is something that changes the future racial character of what is a big melting pot experiment. The question is, are we going to be an open melting pot or have criteria that's just, do they need a job right now? Do we need to fill this role? Or is it something that is more curated about certain qualities, which race or the lightness of skin could just be one, but there's a lot of qualities you could curate for.
Well, I mean, throughout history, migrant workers, that's a real thing. Like in England, they brought people over to England to do their textiles because they didn't know how to do textiles. And that has happened throughout history. And then they went home. Then England sent those people home. And it would be one thing if it was understood as they're here temporarily as workers to enrich the country, and then they go home at some later time. And that's the expectation. But it's like, that economist Borjas, he has that famous adage, we wanted workers. Well, he borrowed it from somebody. We wanted workers, we got people. So we bring in these people to pick the grapes, and we bring in the people to do IT, and we think they're filling a job. But really, like you said, they're having kids, they're becoming part of the country. And, and on some level, I don't think that's the end of the world if it's in a limited quantity, but the problem is it's unrelenting. The number's always going up every year. They've become foreign born has become a significant percentage of the population, and it is turning this into an alien nation, and that's, I think, what the natives have a problem with. We don't hate foreigners. I don't even think people have a problem with foreigners being here, but we don't want the character of the nation to be permanently changed, and that's what's happening. So, I mean, to put it succinctly, that's it.
I mean, I agree with you, and also it's that model is still contemporary in Dubai, for example, where migrant workers are treated as second-class citizens effectively, with no real path towards naturalization. We could do the same right now with migrant laborers if we were just high tax remnants, and we've already ended anchor babies this month, so that was their main route to naturalization. But it's also, I don't know if you could just shut down immigration completely. It is the tech right. They do have a point with global competitiveness and the need to hire top tier talent. But I agree too. It's not the H1B farms; it's the 0.001%. But I wonder too. I mean, uh, what do you what is your how do you even what's your policy or your theory on reviving the fertility rate? Do you think it's just about more money to the middle class without increased fertility? What's your thesis there?
Well, I think that, and this, I hope this doesn't sound like a cop out. If I was going to talk about government policy, there is no government policy that works. You know, Russia, Hungary, they've tried things with some success, but it's limited. I think that, you know, the crisis that is happening is it's a spiritual crisis. It's a lack of religiosity. I think that, you know, feminism is a huge part of why the fertility rate's low. And I think
Hmm.
that the only way, here's the irony. I talked about this on my show the other night. You know, if you're a techno optimist, if that's seen as techno optimist, they think that maybe competition with China or the technologies of the future will reinvigorate the spirit of America and our most fundamental energies, like our sexual energies, as like a man, you know, transmuting your sexual desire into innovation and building, and then also having kids. But I don't actually think that's sufficient. You know, that's the big idea. Is like, if we just do tech, everyone's going to get excited. America's going to be prosperous, but it doesn't solve for the actual problem, which is the spirit. I don't think technology can revive the spirit. I think only the spirit can revive the spirit. So, you know, the country that has been able to reverse the decline in birth rate, or you could say a country that is advanced but has a high birth rate, is Israel, to their credit. And I don't think it's government policy. I think it is because they have an aligned spirit. They have a deep sense of identity, and that is both spiritual, national, racial. This is, and I give them credit for that. And we need that for Catholics. I think we need that for Catholics, Christians. I think we need that for white people. But it cannot be imitated. It cannot be self-consciously imitated for some other purpose. What I mean by that is you can't say, oh, the birth rate's too low, our economy won't grow, let's pretend to be religious again. You can't do that. It needs to be authentic. And that's where I really think that the techno-optimist, they're going to be let down when they realize, you know, they're actually part of the problem. Like, they say they're trying to save humanity, but they forgot what humanity is. And humanity is not like making things more efficient and taking us to Mars and like that kind of stuff. Humanity is archaic things. And so I think that's the only way to get the birth rate up. You actually can't even think about it. You have to focus on the individual soul of individual Americans. If you try to hey, go out and fuck, go out and raise the birth rate, you know, people are killing them. You're going to take people like high schoolers that are doing school shootings and killing themselves. Hey, stop, have kids instead. Like, there's a deep spiritual rot. There's a terminal nihilism
Hmm.
and apathy. And I think the only way to overcome that is rebuilding that existential foundation. And it cannot be done self-consciously.
Yeah, you know, that's something that absolutely uh, we would agree with you at Remilia. It's something we talk about often, fighting back against the nihilism of the contemporary age and the lack of spirituality, the atheistic materialism. Because what I think the birth rate really comes down to is people aren't thinking beyond just their individual hedonism. They're not thinking in terms of generations and about a future that exists beyond them. And I don't think it's necessarily contradictory to techno optimism, though. I think there is a spiritual revival happening even out in the Bay and in California and the general tech scenes. I think people are confronting the limits of atheism to explain the natural world and rationalism to be effective in the real world compared to having a policy of addressing sin and minding virtue and the commitments of prayer. It, I think too, though, one thing that I advocate to my audience is a focus on family rearing personally for themselves, regardless of their race. It does seem to be in the project of saving a white race should be with them, every individual working hard towards finding the right mate and producing children that can then carry on between themselves and thinking in terms of multi generations. Um, but I don't know what you you seem to be focused on your uh your space more than that project, but I don't blame you. You're still young. You're still young.
Well, I mean, it's just that love is not very attractive at the moment. I feel like video games have become like the perfect, if love has become another form of recreation, it will lose to video games every time. But that's really kind of the problem, is like the proposition for intimacy, love, child rearing, it is actually not an attractive proposition for men, because if you want the sexual gratification, it's easily accessible through porn, escorts, casual hookups. If you want marriage, it's this deep investment, and doesn't have very good record of success these days. And there's like structural incentives that make it that way. No fault divorce being the big thing, and just generally the culture and attitude that we have about women, which is that they have agency. They've been liberated from men. That's really the problem. So I think that whole thing's got to be fixed, if we're going to direct sexuality in towards its proper end, because otherwise, you have to look at the society we've created. It's like, well, why don't people want to go and create stable relationships and have kids? It's like, well, have you touched grass? It's brutal out there, and I'm not even speaking from experience. I'm not, I'm more of a not really sexual person in general, but you look outside and it's like it's a wasteland out there. So, but the whole thing is like, not everybody can have everything that they want, or what they've been taught to want, which is the instant gratification, which is the women's independence and equality. Like, look, if women are fertile and if they reach an age where they can reproduce and they find themselves in a classroom, then people aren't going to get married at that age. And it's just that simple. So, and what's more, if people are being told like marriage is arbitrary, then people aren't going to stay together. Who wants to be married? It's going to be a very small group of people that want to stick it out on principle. It's like, because marriage, you both get old, you change physically, you change your personality, you go through difficult periods, and familiarity breeds contempt. Human beings, they actually
Well,
don't like to know everything about each other. So, the only thing that keeps people in these solid formations, it's got to be a society that is united behind religion. Otherwise, people are going to do whatever they want to do. And that's divorce, sex, promiscuity.
yeah, I agree with
So,
you. The sexual hedonism is a product of the atheism, and it is one of, I think, the big projects that needs to happen culturally in America, is a return to spirituality, because it reflects on our reproduction and our breeding. Yeah, it's just for me, it's one of the priorities. It's something I talk about often with my community, but I guess also, or my community is somewhat mixed gender. I think your rapers are mostly guys. You're a bit of a true cell, actually. You're talking about the Freud cell.
I am.
Yeah. It's
I'm the
okay.
only true cell left, dude. Everyone has gone full on like simp or Wojak respecter. I'm the last true cell left.
No, 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 no. I don't appreciate the beta simping. I think a recovery is possible for the Foyd, but absolutely it requires a certain rearrangement of their self identity as women and men.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of conservatives aren't helping, because it's basically everyone is a feminist now. And if you start to express anything that is actually opposed to feminism, even the conservative women start to say, oh, that gave me the ick. Oh, that's toxic. Oh, blah, blah, blah. It has to be totally shut down, totally rethought. And like, I don't hate women. Like, I do love women, but they're just off the reservation these days, totally misguided. And the problem is, you're like, all women do hate men now. And when I say that, not all women hate all men, but that women hate men because women hate the men that most embody maleness. The men that men admire, like Trump. Trump is someone that every real guy loves. Like, this is a guy that he's not pro-social. I mean, he's a businessman, but he's very brash, gets to the point, no nonsense. This is like your boomer dad that every young guy looks up to, every real young guy looks up to. The guy that can handle anything, stoic, nothing, totally unflappable. And not all women, it's getting better, but like all women hated Trump. All women hated Trump. They all hate Andrew Tate. And I've had this thought before. It's like, I feel like it used to be the case that those kinds of guys, like your crazy uncle, your badass grandpa, these guys who were super male, in the old days, young girls would be like a serving wench for those guys. Like, they'd be like, they love those guys. They're affectionate towards those guys. And now I feel like all women look at guys like that and roll their eyes and go, ugh, oh my gosh, you're such a pig. Oh my God. Man. And so, like, it's not that every woman hates every man, and most women wouldn't say they hate men, but a lot of women these days hate maleness, and they like men that act more like women. And even if they're not flamboyant, even if they're not feminine, like in their affect, they like guys that are, like women these days say, I like a guy that's goofy. I like a guy. They like these like silly people, these like silly, simpy people, and anyone that's actually like a fucking boss, like Trump, they hate. And so that's kind of my.
You're Sigma true self. Maybe that's why Vance had to be a race creator. He had to go outside of this grade of woman. Maybe that's what you should consider. Maybe go Asian, like River in the Bay. Yeah.
So that's
Where the
my hot
solution
take.
is.
But yeah, I mean, I think we agree on a lot of stuff. I think that you and I get it. Like, you're more liberal. I get it.
Dude, I don't know if that's exactly true.
Well, you know what I
but
mean. You're like a liberal, like not like a leftist
like
shit
in a
lib, but like a
sense, yes, yeah, I suppose,
right.
yeah.
And and I sympathize with that, honestly. But
yeah, I mean that's what I had said.
Yeah. So look, we agree on a lot of stuff. I mean, your community agrees. There's a lot of groypers in your space or whatever. But the question is always, but that's what's funny is, like, you and I can rap on this kind of stuff, not to, like, take it to another place, but it's like the problem is there's this interested force behind a lot of politics that they want to present as a free discourse, but squelching certain things. And, like, because I could rap with people that I disagree with, like you said, I don't like the Jews. I actually like Jews. People give me shit because I say that, but I do. I think the Jews are intelligent. I think often they're funny. They're very funny. And I get along with them. And I've said it before, and I get shit for it, but I have a lot of Jewish friends because I think they're funny people. But the question is always, when you start to say things that they don't like, then they want to, like, lynch you. You start to say stuff that they don't agree with, and then they're like, well, you're not welcome here anymore. And it's like, okay, well, that doesn't work then. We got to be able to disagree. So I feel like my whole political self-discovery is something like that. I thought we were all cool and free marketplace of ideas and whatever. And then they started to say, no, but you can't go there, but you can't say this, that, the other. And then they roll out these bullshit tactics, smearing, defaming, attacking your character. And anyway, I don't mean to make it about me and that sound whiny again or whatever, but I'm just saying, because I think, someone like you and I, people are sending me all kinds of shit about you. I'm like, I'm not trying to come after this guy's personal life or whatever, and go into the recesses of his, all these personal attacks. But it's like that has been made impossible in this political scene. And I wish it weren't that way. And that's why, the Groyper, I just wish someone would give the Groypers a chance, because I've been thinking about this a lot. It's like, Piers Morgan banned us, Tucker banned us, Tim Pool banned us, Patrick Bet-David banned us, Sobhouse banned us. It's like, what the fuck? We just want to, rap with the rest of everybody. We got our check marks taken. 15 of our guys got banned on X. I thought this was the right wing victory. So, if we could be a party to it, it'd be one thing. But that's just where I'm coming from. If you can understand that, because we can get along and be civil, but we're like the N words. We're the second class citizens here, so that's why we got to be a little pissed off all the time. That's why I got to be mad all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's been very similar for us too in the last 4 years. We've battled our way through the crypto space and basically made it a safe space for us to do our own thing, which is anything we want. So I can feel where you're coming from. I don't know any of the history and lore between the fighting, but I don't have a problem with the Groypers. As soon as I saw that my community was also part of your community, at least whatever sectors, and they told me that you guys, the Groypers, are cool, you're cool, then I'm like, all right, I'll give you a chance. I think we maybe came at it strong, but like I don't know anything about interpersonal politics. I don't care or think about that kind of stuff. Vermilia is just we are trying to force free speech down the throat of culture, and force free information, free markets. I guess maybe the free markets is something you probably disagree with, but that's what it is. In terms of the other points, I have my opinions on the racial makeup or whatever, or the future of the void, but that's just shooting the shit.
Yeah, well, you guys are cool. I mean, your community's cool. I've seen a lot of the ladies, and I fuck with it. By the way, I mean, your project, what it represents. The more I read about it, I liked it. The idea of, because someone was telling me, because I don't know the crypto stuff, but someone was telling me, the NFT people, it's a lot of degenerate gamblers and stuff, and they said you guys care about art and cultivating like something with integrity, with artistic integrity. And that's something that I believe is really important. So, I do support it. I just, when you start to see some of these connections you get, and don't get me wrong, like, because I understand what you're saying when you say not every connection necessarily proves, it proves that there's this intense collaboration, but you do have to recognize that, look, the CIA has been manipulating politics in this country for 100 years, and so do other intelligence agencies. And that's the one heuristic or the one hermeneutic that I feel like right-wing people need to apply to the right-wing space. And I'm not in favor of like a scare, like a red scare, no pun intended. But I do think that is something where a lot of young people like me, like how I was when I was younger, when I was a teenager, they look at right-wing politics and they say what they're seeing is what they're getting. And we know that in politics, that's never the case. And I know you're not maybe a super political guy, but I am. And I know the political people. And the truth is that looks can be deceiving. And in the right wing, there is a lot of, because there's so much is at stake in politics, there's a lot of interest and money in politics and subterfuge. And I feel like we have to be on our guard. And that's why it matters to know who we're talking to and what they're really about and everything like that. Because at the end of the day, what we really need in the country is Americans. We need them. And no offense, Adrian. We need Americans running America. We need Americans that love America running America, and other people that love other countries can run those countries. But we need to run this country. People that actually love the people and love the place. So that's kind of who I am. That's what I'm about. But I respect what you're doing. I like the community.
So one definition, however, that I'd like to narrow down, though, is like, who do you define as an American?
Well, it's a tough question, because if you say American citizen, that means anchor babies. And I think anyone would see the problem with that, that someone who descends from John Adams is more American than someone who's here on a technicality. So I would say there's aspects that go into it. If you speak English, if you have citizenship, if you've been here for a few generations, I think that's the minimum. You got to be here for a few generations. And then I think, as far as race is concerned, it gets complicated, because you know, America was expanded over time, and different parts were grafted on at different points. You know, like, would you say that only the people that came on the Mayflower are American? Because Chicago was only incorporated in the 19th century, but there were English settlers here in the 17th century, and Mexicans have been in Texas for a long time. So, you know, I think we all know, though, that the most American Americans are English. The most American Americans have been here for hundreds of years. And, you know, people that have been here for not as much time and further in proximity from that are probably less American. Where you say they're not American, I would say immigrants, they're not American yet. People don't speak English, you know, things like that. We all recognize also that, you know, you have like Russia. When we think of a Russian, we think of a Slavic person, but there are Muslims that have been living in Russia for hundreds of years, but they're like Russian Muslims or Muslim Russians. Similarly, we think of America, we're supposed to think of Tom Cruise. You know, we're supposed to think of George Washington. We're not necessarily thinking of Sundar Pichai. You know, and yet he's like a Asian American or something. So I guess I believe in the hyphens, but an American is, so it's a little complicated, but yeah, I would say it's something like a combination of a few different attributes: legacy, race. It's in some ways values. You know, when we think of American, we think of boldness, courage, risk taking. If someone's like a pussy, like a weed smoking degenerate, that's not very American. You know, so it encapsulates a lot of different things.
Yeah,
I'd
one thing
actually
I'd
agree with you
add,
on that. But
one thing I'd add
actually,
is
you go ahead and then I'll go ahead.
I think the best proof case of true assimilation is that multi-generationally you see them assimilate racially too. So if you look at the arc of the American experiment, it's largely a racial experiment, but it's regional too. So, you know, there's a West Coast American, an East Coast American, a Southwest American, etc.
Well, yeah, like Miami. If you think of someone from Miami, they speak Spanish, you know, like Miami's like a Caribbean country practically. So, but yeah, I mean, it's just the problem is we're getting to this point where we can't even say what it means. And that's a problem. And it's a big problem, you know, on the topic of birth rates, because it's like if we don't have a sense of who we are, if we don't have a sense of grounding, it's literally suicidal. Even if they're not killing themselves, there's despair. Those sexual energies are subdued because we're deeply uncomfortable and dislocated, and you know, it's not healthy. That's why I say, like, we need people that really love America to run the country, to look at people like that and to actually take care of them, not just like provide for their physical needs, but to actually take care of their society. And that's why I believe in that kind of, like, you know, I work for UPS. They say that UPS only promotes from within. You start unloading the trucks and you rise all the way up to like senior management. And that's kind of what we need in America. We need somebody to be like Trump in a sense like that. You know, or ostensibly, I mean, they want Vance to be like that. I suppose, strictly speaking, he would meet that definition. But at the same time, he's like a venture capitalist. We need somebody that actually loves Americans to be running the country. And by running it, I mean subordinating oligarchs to them as well, because these people don't give a fuck. You know, like Google came in, and like everyone knows Google sucks now. Like Google search results aren't accurate, and the reason why is because they brought in all these Indian engineers, and no offense, and the Indian engineers said, if we make the search results less accurate, they'll spend more time watching ads. Because if you find it right away, you don't go to the second page. But if you keep going through search pages, I can't find it. I'm getting all this other crap. Then there's more time watching the ads. So it's like, that's the kind of thing. Like Steve Jobs should run Apple because he loves Apple. He loves the iPhone. It's true integrity. Similarly, someone should run America who actually understands America, not these people that want to do the advertising scam with our fucking economy and our country. Not to ramble, but
I don't even disagree with you.
okay, so there's a bunch of interesting things there. With what is fundamentally American, it's more so about concept than it is just about race, I think. I think that if you have, say, a particular set of values, and these values are ones that you represent from the self directly, not because somebody tells you to represent them, but because it is something that you yourself have. Let's say, for instance, there's this interesting effect that exists when, say, with blue states, they've kind of fucked up now. So many people are actually moving away from these blue states into red states because those states are still okay. Now, the problem is if you take then the blue state mentality and you put it into the red state, that they will vote different. Then they will vote, they will kind of pollute things in a sense because they will vote a certain way, the same way that fucked up the state that they came from. So, for instance, I would say if you have like some sort of understanding of values and you actually represent them yourself, you have to vote a certain way, for instance, right? Because you have to understand where you're going. So I think what would make someone say, fundamentally American would be someone who understands the values, enforces those values at every level, understands the history, is in line with that history, and is proud of it, I think, even to a certain extent, right? So there's a certain thing that makes people American. And I would say even the ironic thing is many of the greatest things that came to America actually came from other people that weren't even born in that country. Werner von Braun was the only reason why America had a chance at all at succeeding in the first space race. So if it wasn't for someone who literally immigrated there and hadn't spent a single generation there, then you would have not had NASA. You would have none of these things. You would have.
But what do
very
Werner
little,
von
actually.
Braun and Elon have in common?
That they both came here.
What else?
I don't know. That's about it. I mean,
they're white.
Skin color similar? I don't. Yeah. Well, what's the problem with the skin color? What's the problem with that? You can point at many other people that have done great things as well.
Like who?
I think I could take a recent one. We could say would be someone like Aravind Srinivas. He's a pretty cool one. It's a recent tech founder type of person. There's one that I can name right off the top of my head. I think he's a really cool individual.
Yeah. No,
he is Indian, ironically enough, but I think he embraces, American exceptionalism to a certain extent and is an accelerationist. By the way, I do think accelerationism is pretty good, but I think that would cause a bit of a rift, I think, between people here, because they believe that we should slow things down. I don't. I think that moving ahead faster is one of the only solutions.
Also,
but yeah.
Also, interestingly, that guy still doesn't have a green card.
Yeah, it's fucked up, isn't it? He's like contributed enormous economic benefit to the country in which he's in, which is America. So I'd say that somebody who does something like that. I mean, we use a browser that actually circumvents the problems that exist with Google. So Google's search engine is fucking disgusting. So he has solved that problem. Ironically, the very problem that you say has been caused by Indians is an Indian fixed it.
Werner von Braun and Elon, rocket ships, guy, web browser. No, but I agree. I mean, look, other people can
everybody's got to start somewhere.
I know, and I agree. I mean, look, like my favorite artist is Ye. Is Kanye. He's black.
By the way, consider that, for instance, Tesla, which is one of those companies that is owned by Elon and primarily operated by Elon. If you look at one of its primary things that makes it very relevant is the fact that the Tesla car is basically a robot on wheels. And one of the things that they have, which practically no other car company has, because Tesla's not really a car company, they're an AI and robotics company. They have real-world AI in that they can actually interact with the real world in ways that no other AI company has been able to do yet. And who is the head of, who's the head of that specific part of Tesla? The AI, real-world AI thing, the FSD? Who's that?
Who is it?
He's an Indian guy. So
based.
All I'm saying.
Yeah, no, and
I don't think it like boils down to generations. I do agree that limiting immigration is totally warranted. I think everybody agrees here actually with this one. I think it's like bringing people in en masse without any consideration as to who they are, even to a certain extent. I mean, terrorists have come into that country and they've really fucked things up. That is a problem. And look at Germany right now. It's completely falling apart because of the people that they brought in. So you can see the disaster firsthand. So I don't disagree with that whatsoever. I fully agree, however, with, bringing people into various places if they are skilled and they want to, make that place a better place, or they want to come to what is effectively the land of opportunity. And I think that is exactly what one should do. If you see opportunity in another country, you should go there.
That's our home. But that's our home. I mean, that's the problem.
Yeah, but they can make it their home also. and they can make your home better.
But they
That's the
can't.
point.
They can't, because if they
But they
change
have.
what our home is, then it's no longer our home. If I live in a neighborhood that is, 90% white, and then I return to it when I'm an old man, when I'm 60 years old, and it's 90% not white, it's going to be unrecognizable. They won't even be speaking the same language. It's going to be completely different.
Yeah, but
And
what
so
if?
that's the
Yeah, but
problem.
what
Is,
if they're
wait,
speaking the
let
same
me
language?
finish. Like people say, "Oh, America's the land of opportunity. We're going to come in and take advantage." It's like, okay, but we fucking live here. Like we if that involves fundamentally changing our home, then we don't want that. And I think that we can have, and I don't think we disagree, actually. I don't think that, like, we can have a small number of people come here who are truly exceptional and innovate. A small number. But that's not what's happening. We're talking millions. Like 10 million illegals came in under Biden.
Oh yeah, I don't
And
disagree with
millions
that.
of
Right.
and millions
Yeah,
of legal people came
we
here
don't
too.
disagree. Yeah, but we don't disagree. On that, we don't disagree. What I was specifically saying is when you have a people that are brought in who represent the culture on every level, right? Represent the American culture on every level, then basically, even though these people would have a different appearance from the perspective of their biology, they would still be just as American as anyone else who looks a different way. It's just simply how it is. So I think,
disagree.
like, even say, for instance, you come to that neighborhood once again, the same values that have existed before you left are still there in place. So if these values are being reinforced within people, and the people that came there have those same values, even though they look a little bit different, the only thing that will look different is, to a certain extent, maybe even the faces. But I think that would be short-lived also, because even if you were to intermingle,
we're not just values, we're people. That's sort of the point. Is like
people also.
It's
but
like I said,
you're
when
not going to be invaded. The point is, with small amounts of immigration, you're not going to be invaded. What had been happening is basically full-scale invasion by people who came in illegally. Right? We're not disputing that whatsoever, and I agree that's a problem. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, because I think the H-1B had been abused in the past, but of course that's getting overhauled now. At least
you
hope
also
so.
have the diversity visa. You also have
the diversity visa is absolute bullshit. Yeah. So
so I don't think we're in disagreement.
Yeah, no, we're not in disagreement. We're just narrowing down definitions. That's what.
Nick, I am curious. What do you think about the EB-5?
I think all the immigration programs got to go for now, even the EB-5. There's just too many people. I don't think that I think that I'm in favor of a total immigration moratorium. So, and that includes so-called specialist, skilled people, investors, whoever you want to say. I think that for now, and you laugh, but it's like, if we were talking about a vacuum, that maybe that would be fine. Maybe EB-5 would be okay. Maybe we'd keep some of the other ones. But we're talking about a country that has had, like I said, it's constantly increasing for 60 years. So I think we need a pause. And that's not ahistorical either. The country has had waves of immigration, and then always is followed up with a wave where we don't have immigration. They will have a lot of people come in, and then we shut the door for a period of time. Also, for most of the country's history, those people are all coming from Europe. And whether you think, race matters or values matter, maybe, or whatever your relative import you place on those things, I think anyone would agree that it's easier for a white person of a different ethnicity to assimilate than a non-white person, just because of proximity. We use the same alphabet. We have the same religion, generally speaking. We look relatively the same compared to people that, obviously there's more difference between a Nigerian and an Englishman than a German and an Englishman. So for obvious reasons, and that's how we had it when we had all Europeans coming here. Come in, close the door. Come in, close the door. For 60 years, it's just been come right on in. And next year, more people should come in. For 60 years, and they're coming from Asia and Latin America mostly. So, no, I think even investors, we just need to have it all shut down so the people that are here can have a chance to assimilate to whatever extent possible. And then you can open it up to investors and specialists and other people. But for now, I think it should be almost completely.
Hey, listen, guys. I have actually an appointment I got to go to tonight. But if you want to stay on, I'm gonna drop off. Thanks for hosting the space, Adrian. I appreciate it. Nick, it was a good. I don't even know if it counts as a debate, but it was nice to meet you. Oh, he looks like he
Oh,
just dropped
looks
off
like
too.
he disconnected or something. Maybe.
Yeah,
But
I
thanks
think
for
this was a
joining.
really good conversation. Thank you for coming, by the way. And if you'd like to do this at any other point in time again, just hit me up. We'll do it. We'll make something happen.
Yeah, let me know. I think it's fun. I like these kinds of I don't know, debate conversations. It's interesting.
True, true. Also, your community is amazing. Amazing meme that they created. It's fucking great. It's so schizo. I love it.
Adrian, they're begging you to put it on.
Oh my god. Oh yeah, I do in fact have one that looks just like me. It's like one that's on Mars. It's very nice. Like the background is really, really cool. You made one.
I saw
I'll show it off on a live stream.
Oh yeah, you're wearing it on your.
Yes, Maximus.
Yeah, I have it in my Discord server on Signal and such. Out of here was like, why the fuck are you milady? It's so funny.
Yeah, there's a ton of conspiracies, just like that you're Elon Musk, but also that Elon's secretly a milady with an alt. So it just feels that.
That is hilarious. That is absolutely hilarious. I mean, I do have an alt. I should probably put it on there.
Oh yeah. There you go.
Complete the. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, anyways, thanks for coming, man. This is great. Do you see Nick Fuentes connecting again, or is he dropped also?
Don't see him connecting. I think he just dropped, perhaps.
Yeah, my phone actually died earlier when you guys were talking. My phone died. I had to charge it and get back in.
That explains
it.
He's
coming back for a second.
He's coming back?
Yeah, he's connecting in.
Cool.
You back, Nick?
Hey, yeah, I just wanted to say I'm heading out as well, but yeah, thank you, Charlotte, Fang, for joining up the space. I know I'm surrounded by drama and controversy, so I appreciate you joining the space. I thought it was a good conversation. I'm a fan of Milady. Maybe I can come to one of your events. If you're a free speech guy, I'd love to show support. If you don't want the smoke, that's okay too. But it was good meeting you. And thanks, Adrian, for putting this on, and your co-host as well. You're always super objective, and we love your spaces. You're totally solid. So I appreciate you a lot.
Thanks, man.
So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, cool, Nick. Great to meet you. And yeah, we'll connect.
All right, sweet. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, I'll be dropping off too. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. I think we can wrap it here. What do you guys think? Like, that's a good time to wrap. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine.
Not really much else. Yeah, I think there's not much else to discuss, really. But yeah, this is great. Thank you all for coming. If you'd like to see more of this, make sure to follow, turn notifications on. I go live every single day on Spaces, almost every single day, as a matter of fact. I might be taking a bit of a break coming up because I have a bunch of things that I do in real life. But I frequently host Spaces just like these, record the conversation. So join us there if you'd like. Also, thank you for all of the Milady community for coming out. Thank you for all of the community that came out from Fuentes as well, to joining up and listening to this and being relatively civil in the comments. I really enjoy this. This was great. Should do it again sometime. Thank you all for coming. See you on the timeline.
Good night.